There is a feeling in football that every supporter has experienced at some point. The feeling of watching something unfold in front of you and not being able to believe what you're seeing. Not the normal disbelief of a goal against the run of the play or a missed penalty at a crucial moment. Something deeper than that. The feeling that the game itself, the rules, the officials, the system built to ensure fairness, has worked against you in a way that goes beyond misfortune. Egypt's players felt it in Atlanta on Tuesday evening, and their coach, Hossam Hassan, standing at the post-match microphone after the most emotionally devastating defeat in Egyptian football history, said it with a clarity that has now circled the world. It is all about money. They want Messi to stay in the tournament. In football, many things happen off the pitch because of interests. What happened was unfair. Egypt deserved to qualify. We were the better team. Those are not the words of a man reaching for excuses. They are the words of a man who believes with complete conviction that something beyond football determined the outcome of a match his team had been winning 2-0 with 11 minutes remaining, and that the institution responsible for the fairness of that match had interests that conflicted with applying its own rules impartially. Whether you agree with Hossam Hassan or not, you cannot look at what happened in Atlanta on Tuesday and say the questions don't deserve to be asked. Because the full sequence of events, the disallowed goal, the unchecked foul, the physical scenes at the final whistle, the objection to the referee's appointment that was raised before a ball was kicked, and the Instagram message posted afterward, adds up to something this tournament cannot simply absorb and move on from. Not now, not given everything that has already surrounded this competition. So what's really happening here? Let's go through it exactly as it unfolded, starting with what happened on the pitch and then widening to everything surrounding it. Egypt produced for the first 79 minutes in Atlanta the greatest performance in their World Cup history. They were disciplined, they were organized, they were dangerous on the counter, and they were winning. Mustafa Zico scored the opening goal after a brilliant run from Mohamed Salah that split the Argentine defense. And then, 12 minutes later, Zico converted again to make it 2-0. Argentina, the defending champions, the side containing Messi in what everyone knew was his final World Cup, were 2 goals down in a round of 16 match with less than 20 minutes remaining. Egypt were 11 minutes away from the greatest result in their football history. Their goalkeeper had already made critical saves. Their defenders had tracked and contained the forward line that had dismantled Algeria, producing a Messi hat-trick that equaled the all-time World Cup goals record in the very same venue 3 weeks earlier. And then the sequence that began that changed everything. Marwan Ataya stepped on Lisandro Martinez as Martinez was preparing to enter Egypt's penalty area. VAR reviewed the incident. The relevant provision that a goal can be disallowed if a foul occurs and then directly leads to the start of the attacking possession phase that results in the goal was applied to Egypt's second goal. Ataya's step on Martinez happened at the opposite end of the pitch from where Zico eventually scored. Multiple Argentine players had the ball in their possession and had the opportunity to stop the attack at various points between that foul and the goal. None of them did. But VAR determined that the possession phase began with the foul and that the goal therefore could not stand. Egypt's players and bench were incandescent, not because the rule doesn't exist, it does, but because the application of that rule to a foul on the opposite end of the pitch across a sequence in which multiple players touched the ball and had the opportunity to break possession stretched the attacking possession concept to a length that several experienced football analysts described as remarkable. The goal was erased. The score was 2-0 to Argentina still, but the momentum had shifted. What happened next is a story that Hossam Hassan describes so directly after the match. Christian Romero scored for Argentina, 2-1. Lionel Messi, who had been quiet all evening, suddenly found the space and quality that this stage brings out of him regardless of what preceded it. He created the equalizer, and then, in the final minutes of normal time, scored himself, 2-2. And then in stoppage time, Enzo Fernandez struck the winner after a counterattack that Egypt's bench and management believed began with an unchecked foul on Mohamed Salah. Egypt claimed that Alexis McAllister committed a foul that set Argentina in motion for the goal. VAR, according to Egypt, didn't even check the incident. The penalty they believed should have been given was not reviewed. Instead, the counterattack was allowed and Fernandez scored. Hossam Hassan confronted referee Francois Letexier at the final whistle.
Egypt's goalkeeping coach Safan El-Sagir had to be physically restrained from approaching the official. Multiple yellow cards were issued to members of the Egyptian bench and squad who were vocally contesting the decisions. The scenes were chaotic, emotional, and entirely understandable from a human perspective, given what Egypt's players and staff believed they had just watched happen. And then Hossam Hassan posted an Instagram message to Le Texier. 3 words: "The world is watching."
Here's the interesting part. Because Egypt's objection to Le Texier was not something manufactured after the match in the heat of the moment. Egypt had formally objected to the appointment of the French referee before the match even began. Their stated reason was the French-Argentina connection, specifically that France had lost the 2022 World Cup final to Argentina in the most dramatic manner, and that selecting a French referee for Argentina's round of 16 match at the next World Cup created an optics problem that, whether or not it reflected any actual bias, was avoidable. The objection was registered. The appointment was not changed. Hassan referenced this directly in his post-match press conference. He said Egypt had been objecting to the selection of the referee because of the French situation, and that everybody has to suffer at some point, and they had suffered. That is a measured way of saying something pointed, that the concern Egypt raised before the match, the concern they were told would not be addressed, became the context within which every disputed decision of the evening now sits. He also said something that goes further than any specific complaint about any specific decision. He said there seemed to be pressures from the Argentina side on this outcome. He said the world champion received support at every level. He said he was saying this not in the heat of the moment, but after reflection on what he had observed across 90 minutes plus stoppage time. He said the effect of the outcome went way beyond the defeat itself, because Egypt had seen neither respect nor fair play. Zico's assessment was starker. He said the cup was being given to Argentina. That phrase, "the cup is being given," is not an allegation of a specific corrupt act. It is the expression of a footballer who looked at the sequence of VAR decisions in his team's match and reached the conclusion about whose interests the system was serving. He said the refereeing was obvious in front of everyone. He said a penalty turned into a counterattack goal. And then Mohamed Salah, who walked into the dressing room after the match and gathered his teammates around him, said simply, "Hard luck. It's over. It's God's decree and what he willed." That is the captain absorbing the loss with the dignity the moment required, even as his coach and his teammates were expressing everything Salah was choosing not to say publicly. Now bring in the context of everything else this tournament's VAR system has already produced. The Switzerland-Qatar penalty decision where visual evidence was never shown. Messi's challenge to Algeria's Mandi, 11 players in aerial contact, studs to calf, reviewed and unchanged, while experienced analysts said it should have been red. Algeria's formal complaint filed with FIFA in Zurich. Germany's disallowed goal against Paraguay, described by Gary Lineker and multiple former professionals as one of the softest VAR calls they had ever seen. The Belgium-USA controversy, where FIFA suspended Balogun's automatic suspension through a process Belgium said was conducted without any explanation being provided to them. Carlos Queiroz saying VAR went to a coffee, then clarifying he was joking because otherwise they would find him. Egypt's complaint is the latest in a sequence, but it is different from the others in one specific way. Previous complaints about VAR decisions in this tournament have focused on individual calls. Was this a penalty? Was that a red card? Should this goal have stood? Egypt's complaint goes further. Their manager directly suggested that the outcomes were shaped by interests beyond the football, that the desire to keep Messi in the tournament was itself a factor in how decisions were made. That is a claim of a different order from saying a call was wrong. It is a claim about intent, and it has been made publicly and on the record by a head coach of a qualifying nation at a World Cup press conference.
FIFA will not respond substantively. They never do in these circumstances. The governing body will note the results, observe that the officials were duly appointed and followed appropriate processes, and decline to engage with the specific claims made by Hassan. That is the institutional playbook, and it has been applied consistently across every controversy of this tournament. The question of whether that playbook, the refusal to provide transparency, the declining to explain decisions to affected parties, the removal of the automatic suspension section from the Belgium pre-match briefing, serves the long-term credibility of the competition, is one that the events of this World Cup keep forcing back into the conversation. Think about what Egypt's story at this tournament actually represents. They reached the round of 16 for the first time in their history. They beat New Zealand. They drew with Belgium and Iran in a group that finished level on points across all four teams. And then they led Argentina 2-0 in the round of 16 with 11 minutes remaining, had a goal disallowed by a VAR decision that required the application of the attacking possession phase rule to a foul on the opposite side of the pitch, watched Argentina score 3 goals in the final period, and went home. Mohamed Salah's greatest chance at a World Cup moment has passed. He turned 34 during this tournament and will be 38 when the next one comes. What Hassan Hassan said after the match will generate debate for weeks. Whether his accusations are fair, whether the specific decisions he cited were wrong, whether the institution he was criticizing has earned the benefit of the doubt that would typically be extended in circumstances like these are all questions that reasonable people will answer differently. What cannot be answered differently is that a national team's head coach at a World Cup press conference said the result was about money and Messi and interests off the pitch, and that across the first 3 weeks of this tournament, the trust infrastructure that should have allowed those words to be dismissed as sour grapes had been so consistently eroded that they weren't dismissed at all. What do you think? When a World Cup manager says in public that FIFA wants to keep a specific player in the competition, is that a statement that should be taken seriously? Or is it the natural reaction of a coach whose team lost 2-1 down to 3-2 in 11 minutes? If you found this worth your time, a like helps more than you think. Subscribe if you enjoy thoughtful football coverage, and let me know your view in the comments. I read every one.